Indiana plays Purdue on Saturday. They are playing great basketball of late. Sans that game, and Maryland played really well at home this year. They got a really friendly whistle. Indiana's also been dealing with a lot of injuries. Thompson's still kind of a shell of himself. Geronimo's been hurt. You're going to get Xavier Johnson back, presumably, at some point. You have an All-American player that you can rely on. And coming into the season, this is a team that many touted as a potential Final Four team. And I think at their peak, this is a top 10 team. And you can find them, 50-1. It's pretty widespread. And I think this is the right time to buy them because I think if they get healthy, they're in that mix. They're in the mix of teams that can make a deep run easily to the Final Four. And if they beat Purdue here, right, this is maybe the bottom of the market for Indiana because then also they're probably going to keep getting healthier. So I'm going to bring Indiana 50-1 to the table. I think this is the right time to buy, whether or not they beat Purdue. So even if they lose to Purdue, and I think they're going to beat Purdue on Saturday, but even if they lose to Purdue, their price isn't going to fall off too much. But as they get healthier, I think they're going to get hot here. I like what I've seen of late. And then from a futures perspective, losing that game at Maryland right before this Purdue game, I think this is probably the right time to buy the Hoosiers. So I'm going to roll with IUBB. BJ, I'll throw it to you.
I'm going to bring in.
By the way, great news. Brian Ferentz, lifetime contract.
Great news. There were, I was on the Iowa message boards and I thought we were getting Josh Gaddis for a little bit, but no coaching changes. Kirk couldn't fire his son, just couldn't do it. But hey, you know what? We have Cade McNamara, and people forget he took Michigan all on his back to the college football playoff, and now we have him. So anyway, that's for another day. I'm going to bring to the table Virginia. You can find them at 25-1 at a couple books. Now, they are coming in on a 7-game win streak coming into the weekend against Virginia Tech. And like we alluded to on Tuesday, like you did, Stuck, not the best of spot. And, it's a potential lull for them. They could potentially lose that game. But after that game, their schedule opens up pretty well. They got 2 home games against NC State and Duke. And then their last difficult road test is near the end of the season against North Carolina. I think that with this Virginia team now at 25-1, I have to ask myself, are they going to be 25-1 come March Madness, given how easy their schedule is going forward? Obviously, the ACC is very down, but bracket
you assume they also make a run in the ACC tournament because it's just going to be hard to get upset early in that bracket.
Exactly. And so now I have to ask myself again, are they going to be 25-1 by the time the tournament comes? Bracket Matrix has them as a 3 seed right now. If they only lose 1 or 2 games down the stretch, you could potentially be looking them at only 5 losses, potentially a 2 seed in the tournament. This is a team that has incredible experience. 4 of their 5 starters are seniors. All 5 of them can hit shots from outside the arc. They have 4 guys shooting over 40% from behind the arc. They have one of the best coaches in the country. They're playing their slow pace. They're 20. They're the good mark of being around below 20. In terms of your ranking for offensive and defensive efficiency. They're right around there right now. So I think the time is now to buy in on Virginia rather than if they potentially do run the table in a weak ACC and we get to the tournament and there are 2, even a 3 seed, and they're sitting at 16-1. And like we've already mentioned with all the variants and the things that are happening with all these other teams who clearly have flaws, I think Virginia is worth a bet at 25-1.
Yeah, and you have one of the best coaches in the country. And another thing, well, I'll save my thoughts for that before when we vote. Let me throw it to Mike. What are you going to bring here?
So I make no bones about it. I think the Mountain West is one of the best, conferences out there in terms of, kind of straddling that fence of true mid-major conference and, not quite Power 5 conference. And kind of going through it, I was thinking of this, Boise, San Diego State game that's coming up. And I was like, I wonder what San Diego State's number is right now. 100-1. That doesn't move me. I wonder what Boise's is. Right now it's out there at 300-1 in the market for Boise State to win the national title. And I understand that it's a huge jump to say that they're going to win 6 games. At 300-1, what I'm really betting is, can they make it to the second weekend? And in terms of their path, if they're to win the Mountain West Conference tournament, I believe that they'll get a 7 or an 8 seed. And we've discussed all throughout this podcast, ever since we launched up at the beginning of January, that the 1 and 2 seeds this year are incredibly vulnerable. So if they are able to get into a matchup with a 1 or 2 seed in the round of 32, I think that Rice has the coaching prowess, particularly end of game situations. You saw it against New Mexico about 2 Fridays ago, where they do the half court pass, timeout, set up a half court play, get a wide open 3, send it to overtime. And the other element of it is I love what they do defensively. They're 5th in 3-point defense this year as a team. They're 10th in opposing shooting efficiency allowed. So they can win those grinded out games where there's tons of stoppages at the end. There's lots of reviews and timeouts. They have the coaching. They have the offensive versatility as well, with 4 starters averaging double digits. The number is what drew me in. Anything less than 200-1 wouldn't have moved me, but 300-1, it's basically in the same category of teams that, in my opinion, are going to be cannon fodder in the first round of the tournament, if they even make it. You know, they have teams like Chattanooga at 300-1. It's like, yeah, they're just going to get blasted, just like Colgate and all these other squads. I think Boise could put it together and win 3 games, have a nice Cinderella run to the second weekend, Sweet 16, Elite 8. And then when you're holding a 300-1 ticket, even with couch change on it, that presents a ton of hedge opportunities. So you're not always playing to win the game, as Herm Edwards would say, the game being the national title. In this case, I think I'm just banking on a little mini run out of my Broncos here, and 300-1 gets it done for me.
Yeah, they would be in that, like, they could probably gonna be in like that 7-10, which is like you gotta face a 1 or a 2 most likely in the second round. But this is the year where the 1s and the 2s, there's not much difference between the 3s and the 4s, right? And like the gap between, like we said, the top 5 teams and then 10 through 15, not great. It's not massive. So I don't think there's a lot of separation. So I don't think like those teams that get the 7, 8, 9, 10 are as hamstrung as they might be from making a potential run in the future. All right, let's vote. Then we'll share our thoughts. Let's go. Hold up. A 1 for Indiana, a 2 for Virginia, and a 3 for Boise State on 3, 2, 1. All right, we're going with my Indiana Hoosiers. You guys both voted for Indiana. I went with Virginia. I like the price of Boise. Don't mind that as just to fire a long shot this year. I'll give you my thoughts on both of yours, and I'll go to you guys. The one thing worries about me about Boise is that they run into like if they would run into Purdue, like they just don't have the size. But I love if they can switch. Their switchability, their depth really concerns me. So like that's okay in the tournament. You play like 2 games, you got a break. But if they have anyone that gets hurt, they're just like down to freshmen. They're one of the, I think they're like outside the top 350 in bench minutes. So their depth does concern me a bit. And I also am like, like the Mountain West has tricked us before. I'm a huge fan of the Mountain West this year. I think this is the year where we can actually believe in them. Like if you just look from a talent perspective. And San Diego State, you mentioned, they're interesting. They're just so reliant. Like Matt Bradley is so streaky that if he's on, like they're ridiculous. But if he's just taking 17 shots and he's 3 of 17, like he could shoot them out of the game, which worries me about that. But I believe in the Mountain West this year. I'm going to go out. I'm going to say that. But they've tricked me before. And then in regards to Virginia, yeah, this is probably a good time to buy them. It's not. I don't think they could. Like I think they're going to lose on Saturday, but it's not going to do much to their price. They're probably going to be an underdog. And like the ACC is so bad that they're just going to stack wins, improve their seeding. And a couple things I like about them. I mean, they have one of the best coaches in the country. Their defense isn't as elite, but it's still like a top 25 defense, like as elite as we've seen. Their offense is really good. And then, Bennett's going to always have a great defensive scout. They have a point guard in Kihei Clark who's won a national title. And, he was a contributor on that team. And they grind games. They're comfortable in the half court, which is a lot of times what these NCAA tournament games turn into. But they're running great offense, and they certainly could make a run. But you guys went with my Hoosiers. BJ, I'll throw it to you. Any thoughts that you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's the right time to buy Indiana, especially coming off that loss. And, they have 2 games coming up, obviously against Purdue this weekend, but then against Rutgers as well, following that, both of them at home. If they beat Purdue on a national stage, this is a 4 p.m. ESPN game. that price is definitely going to drop to probably at least 45 or 40 to 1. So I agree with you. I think now is definitely the time to buy in on Indiana.
Mike, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, Indiana couldn't throw it in the ocean against Maryland, as you mentioned, Stuck. Like that happens from time to time. The Terps also got 29 foul shot attempts in that game. So, like, what are you gonna do? I don't hold that against them. We'll get into it for Saturday's card. I like the Hoosiers. I'll get into a few more reasons why. But certainly, I think this is probably the best price you're going to get them at for the rest of the season.
Yeah, a really good home court advantage too. One of the best in the country. And their next two games are against top 25 teams at home. So they also have Rutgers at home after Purdue. So they certainly could improve their stock over the next week. All right, let's move on. Good stuff. So now we have, and I like this because we have like a UConn at 22 to 1. We have TCU at 40 to 1 and Indiana at 50 to 1. And I would argue that these are three teams that are in that mix that, you know, of the 15 to 20 best teams in the country. And we're getting them at generous prices. And I think at the end of this exercise, when we have 6 or 7 teams, that's what we want. And then we want that, you know, we want to try to buy these teams at the right time, but we want to find those teams that, and we might throw 1 or 2 long shots in, Mike, to your point, that we just, hey, let's get this team to this point and then we can hedge. But as far as our core portfolio, I think we're off to a good start.